Howdy, guys, and welcome to night 69 of Big Brother Season 23's Overnight Feeds Recap. And welcome to Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. All right, we had the veto ceremony yesterday. There was a little talk about the veto being used, but we didn't expect it to be, and it wasn't. Kyland had the veto power. He chose to keep the nominations the same as he had made on Friday, which is Hannah and Tiffany, both on the block, but really the target this week is Tiffany. Now, there's a lot of campaigning, a lot of pitching going on. We'll talk about that. A lot of conversations throughout the evening, so we'll talk about it. But for right now, it really seems like Tiffany is going to finish up in sixth place. She'll be the first Cookout Alliance member heading to the jury house. Now, what she tells the jury, we'll have a discussion on that as well. But it looks like Tiffany's probably destined to go home this week. Then we'll see what happens in the second half of the double eviction. Hannah may be following Tiffany out the door, but if she wins HOH, if she wins veto, everything else could change, right? So with that, let's go ahead and talk about the live feeds themselves. A lot of talking going on, mainly some campaigning from both of them. But again, I feel like some decisions have been made. So a lot of positioning, posturing for later on in the game is also. So let's start off. A lot of talk yesterday, or a lot of studying of days, events. We had the Houseguest really spending a lot of time talking about the next few competitions. Are they going to be physical? Are they going to be mental? Is there going to be some just random events that are taking place? Well, Big D had a good point. He said, I don't think it'll be random at this point in time. The viewers wouldn't like seeing just someone randomly getting HOH this late in the game. And I think he's right. But I also think, yes, we'll probably get the day's competition at some point between now and the final game or final competition of this season. But based on my season, there's going to be a lot more physical competitions than anything else. But everyone is studying their days, trying to remember what day different events happened on, who got nominated, all the things that we always study as house guests inside the house. Kyland and Big D are studying together, as is Hannah and Xavier. It's always interesting to see who's studying together, who's working with each other, either because they are in a tight alliance or because they're trying to develop a bit of a tight alliance. Kyland and Big D, tight. Hannah and Xavier, I think Xavier is trying to strengthen his bonds with Hannah, realizing that if Hannah was to win HOH, Xavier could find himself on the block, so he's trying to be careful. Xavier seems to know these days pretty well, just based on the small amount I saw, but we've got that. All right, as I said, a lot of campaigning going on, so let's just take off with that. Talk about Tiffany campaigning to Big D. Two people who haven't always seen eye to eye. They've both acknowledged that. But she's saying that she really wants to work with Big D and Azah and Kyland against Xavier. This is the only one she didn't mention. She said, I won't work with y'all guys. And if you keep me, Big D, I'm not coming after you. Well, Big D is saying, yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Tiffany, but Hannah's telling us the exact same things. She's saying she won't come after me. She's saying that she wants to work with Azah and myself and Kyland as well. So you and Hannah kind of throwing out the same pitch out there. And Tiffany saying, Hannah, she's cutthroat. And she's trying to say that Hannah may not honor it the way I would. At some point, I think Big D, I think he's talking to Xavier, and he's saying, Tiffany's really throwing Hannah under the bus at this point in time. Well, when you're on the block, you do what you have to do. But she's saying she wants to work with him. She'd never come after Big D. I'm not sure I believe that at all. But Big D is talking just about final two scenarios and all that. And he's saying that if he, or Tiffany or Kyland, but primarily himself, if he's sitting next to Xavier in those final two chairs, he thinks the jury will have a tough time deciding who to award that money to. Tiffany corrects him. She says, it's not going to be an easy, or it's not going to be a tough decision for me, Big D. I hate to say it, but Xavier's winning everything if it comes down to that. Well, Big D seems a little shocked and surprised. And at first I thought he's just kidding around, but I truly think that Big D is feeling like he's got a decent chance against Xavier, which I don't think he does. But he seems a little shocked and surprised when Tiffany comes right out and says, no, it's not going to be a hard choice for me at all if it's you and Xavier on that block, Big D. He shouldn't be surprised. Does he really think Tiffany's going to give Big D the money, regardless of who Big D's sitting in the final two with? I don't think so. But Big D eventually is also talking to Kyland. And we start seeing a little bit of the way maybe Big D is pitching himself and how he's going to sell the jury on why he deserves the money if he gets drugged to the final two. Now, previously, Big D was trying to convince everyone to take him to the final two by saying, I haven't won anything. What am I going to say? All I did was cook and clean in the house and come up with the cookout name. And he's really downplaying his social game and all that. Well, now we hear him starting to talk about some things that give an idea how he's going to sell, what his final two speech would be. He's telling Kyland that look, Xavier's been on the block 4 times. I've only been on the block twice, and I got pulled down by other people while Xavier had to pull himself down. I think Big D's trying to suggest that he has more support, more friends in the house, that he's better liked by everyone. That Xavier just gets put on the block all the time. Obviously, no one likes him. He has to pull himself off because no one else will support him. So he's really pitching the social game aspect, which is the only thing he really has to hang his hat on at this point in time. Don't think it's going to work. I mean, let's remember Xavier was on the block a couple times, just one time because of a random spin of the wheel, could have easily been anyone. And the other time he chose to put himself on the block in order to win a veto. So yeah, Big D's coming up with some ideas. I just don't think it's going to work if they're sitting in the final two chair together. We've got Hannah and Xavier talking. Tiffany was it Hannah? Maybe it's Tiffany and Xavier talking. Tiffany is saying she just wants to stay. Yeah, it's Tiffany Xavier. Tiffany's saying, look, I just want to stay a little bit longer. I want to win a little bit more money before I go home. I'll be happy if I go home in 4th place, Xavier. I know you got it. I just want to stay a little bit longer. But Hannah, she wants to go to the final two. She's going to do whatever it takes at the final two. Little me, nah, I'm happy with final 4. Don't worry about me, Xavier. It's Hannah you got to worry out for. So that's what she's pitching. Xavier finishes off and says, well, I appreciate it. You've made a good pitch. Tiffany says, look, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be a bit of a shield for you, Xavier. People will probably look at Big D, people like that. They'll come after me way before they come after you. So as long as I'm in here, you've got one more level of protection. Yeah, when you get down to the final 5, final 6, that's an even tougher argument to make. But she's throwing it out there. Xavier eventually says, well, you've made some good points, Tiffany. I appreciate everything you're saying. I think valid concerns on your part. But I got to say, I'm still kind of leaning towards keeping Hannah going forward. And later, Xavier tells Big D, says, nah, Tiffany, 100%. She's going to the jury house this week. I'm not keeping Tiffany. It really sounds like it's going to be Big D and Xavier both voting to send Tiffany out the door. Azah going back and forth a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But it sounds like it very well could be a 2-1 vote to send Tiffany to jury house. All right, we've got Big D and Xavier talking some more. Big D saying that, look, Xavier, if you win HOH, you need to put up Hannah and Azah. And Big D saying the 3 of us, Kyland and you and me, we deserve to be final 3 after the game we've played. Now, Big D's 2/3 right? But he's feeling like the 3 guys really are the best players in the game. They need to be at final 3 together. And we know that Big D wants a final 3 of the 3 guys. We've got Kyland telling Hannah that Xavier's biggest threat in a final 2 wouldn't be Kyland. No, that Xavier's biggest threat of losing the game would be Big D sitting in the chair next to him. Well, I'm not buying it. I truly think Kyland is trying to set up some targets. He's trying to make sure that if Hannah does win HOH, that she sees Xavier and Big D to the biggest threats, not just to Kyland's game, but to her game as well. So he's trying to position himself a little bit by saying Big D and Xavier are the biggest threats. We've got Big D talking to Azah. The 2 original Jokers are still working together. And he's saying that he thinks Xavier and Kyland will come after each other next or very soon after Tiffany goes out the door. I'm not sure that Big D and Azah, either one, realize that Kyland and Xavier have a final 2 that they very well may plan on keeping. I think they're planning on keeping. At least it seems like Kyland's planning to keep it. Xavier, well, I don't know. We'll see. But Big D saying, yeah, these guys are both, they're alpha guys. They're territorial. They'll go after each other. I really think get Tiffany out the door, let the two of them go after each other, and we just sit back and we should be good. Big D is saying that if he wins HOH, he's going to put up Hannah as his target, but he'll also put up Azah as a pawn. Well, Azah seems to take this okay. She says, "Oh, this is the first time you ever told me that, Big D, that you would want to put me up as a pawn." But okay. She takes it okay, but why would Big D tell her that? I don't know why he would volunteer her as a pawn and think that she's going to be okay with it. But he's thrown that out there. But here's the thing. He follows that up by saying, well, here's to you, Azah. If you win HOH, you need to put up Hannah as a primary target and put me up as a pawn as well. I'm not sure why he would say that either. But at that point, Azah responds and says, "No, yeah, okay, but I would rather put up Hannah and Kyland versus putting you up, Big D," which makes a lot more sense to me. But Big D then says, "Look, we both have a deal with Kyland. We can't put him on the block. Even as a pawn, we've agreed we can't put him on the block." Is Big D just setting Azah up for the guys for failure? Is he just figuring that he wants to stay safe with Kyland and Xavier, so make sure that he's got a reason to put Azah up if he wins HOH, as opposed to making the guys mad at him? I feel like that's it, because otherwise, why would you ever volunteer to go up on the block versus Hannah? You don't know what's going to happen. Go on the block, Hannah wins Veto, and next thing you know, it's you versus, I don't know, Azah or whatever. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but he's really preaching that they need to leave Kyland alone, not go after him at this point in time. We know Big D and Kyland. Big D thinks he's got a final two with Kyland as well, so maybe that's the crux of it. He doesn't want Kyland having anything to come back on Big D with, or Azah, either one. Tiffany is talking to Azah. She's telling Azah the same thing she told Xavier a little bit earlier, that she just wants to stay past Final Six, beyond Final Six, so she can win a little bit more money. Just as an FYI, they've talked about it enough, I can mention as well. Just as an FYI, if you finish in first, you win obviously $750,000. If you finish in second, you win, I think it's $75,000 this year, bumped up from the $50K of previous years. But if you come in third, fourth, or fifth place, you also get some extra bonus money just for lasting as long as you did. And so that's what Tiffany's getting at. She's saying, if I can just stay till fifth, I get a little extra bonus money. If I can stay to fourth, I get a little bit more bonus money, etc. But I just want to win a little bit more money. That's all I want, Azah. I don't care about winning the whole thing. Tiffany is talking about saying, look, Hannah and Kyland likely have a deal to work together. So Kyland's always going to put up you, Azah, before he puts up Hannah. And you need to be aware of that when we're making the decision about keeping me versus keeping Hannah. Well, first of all, Kyland can't play in the next HOH. After that, yes, but he can't play in the next HOH. And I think it's likely that he keeps Azah over Hannah. We've already heard he and Xavier both talking about Hannah would be the next target after Tiffany. So I'm not sure that Tiffany really has a good read on it, or at least she's trying to sell it to Azah. I'm not sure that Azah's really buying it, though. We've got Azah and Xavier talking. Azah, maybe she did buy it, because Azah suddenly is doing a little campaigning for Tiffany to Xavier, trying to explain some reasons why maybe it'd make more sense to get rid of Hannah. That Hannah's maybe a little bit stronger competitor, things like that. But eventually, it doesn't seem like Xavier really is buying into Azah's campaign. And so she asks him, she says, look, are we dead set on voting out Tiffany over Hannah? And Xavier says, yeah, we are. And at that point, Azah says, okay, then. And she seemed perfectly fine with it. Not the strongest, most dedicated pitch I've ever seen from someone. But I will say this, Azah was fighting for Tiffany for a little bit. Probably more than Tiffany would have been fighting for Azah if the roles were reversed. But Azah made an effort. She just didn't really want to push it too much. And so after that, we've got Xavier. I think it may have actually been right before that, but we've got Xavier and Kyland meeting. They're just pumping each other up. They're talking about being a final two together, that they think they're in a position where they can really make it to the end. So they're just kind of giving each other pep talks and getting each other fired up, knowing that they're at the very end of the game. Here's the thing. At this point, based on what I heard last night, I really think that Big D and Azah will pretty much do whatever Kyland and Xavier want them to do. I feel like Kyland and Xavier are running the show. They're just dragging Big D and Azah along, and those two are happy to be drug along. And it truly is a Kyland and Xavier show at this point. And because of that, I think it's getting more and more likely we're going to see an Xavier Kyland final two. Now, obviously, competitions can play a role in that, but knowing that Azah and Big D are the comp beasts that they are, yeah, right. Knowing how they've done in past competitions, and knowing that Kyland and Xavier have both control from a social standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, and most likely from a competition win standpoint, I just think it's these two guys. It's their game to lose. Hannah may be the only person left in this house after Thursday. Well, after the first half of Thursday, Hannah may be the only person left in this house that can kind of throw a wrench in those plans, that may still have the opportunity to sneak in and make it to a final two as opposed to one of these guys. Hannah's a little bit of an uncertainty. Big D and Azah, I think they're happy to just go along and accept whatever position they get, third and fourth, most likely. All right, and then finally we've got Big D and Kyland are talking. They're suggesting that Tiffany maybe, they're talking about, should they tell the jury? What should they tell the jury? And they've decided that maybe Tiffany is the first Cookout Alliance going into the jury house, that maybe Tiffany would be the best person to tell the jurors about the cookout, about their mission, especially the fact that she already was able to tell Claire to some degree about it. Claire seemed okay. So they're thinking Tiffany, of all people, may be the one best to break the news to the rest of the jury about how this season has kind of played out. So they've made that decision. Kyland says, let me talk to Tiffany. I'll explain it to her and see if she's willing to do that. Once she's out of here, explain everything that went on. So we haven't seen that conversation yet, but he's going to have that conversation with Tiffany. And finally, to close out the evening, we've got Big D and Kyland sleeping in the HOH bed. Big D's really pumping up Kyland, talking about how great he's played and all of that, and trying to keep this relationship as tight as possible. I really think that Big D believes that he's in a final two with Kyland. We've already heard Kyland say he wants to take Xavier to the end because he wants to take the strongest, the best player possible. But Big D isn't aware of that. Big D thinks the two of them are the tightest in the house. He's going to be a little hurt, I think, when he realizes, if the opportunity arises and Kyland takes Xavier over Big D. I think it's going to shock Big D a little bit. I think he's a little more confident than he probably needs to be about his position in the house right now. But we'll find out. Maybe Kyland decides he wants to take the easiest person next to him in jury as opposed to the hardest person, and he drags Big D right along, and Big D's going to think that they are the final two and they're tied, and he may be right. All right, guys, that's it for right now. Monday morning, we'll be back tomorrow to see if anything has changed. I doubt anything will. But we still don't know exactly why they had veto ceremony very early in the morning, why they shut the yard down a day early. We may still get a surprise later today, this evening. But I should be back tomorrow. I'll give y'all an update at that point. In the meanwhile, y'all have a fantastic Tuesday. Did I say Monday earlier? Y'all have a fantastic Tuesday. Enjoy your day, and I will be back tomorrow. SKD 143. Cheers, my friends. Bye.